The Indiana Fever, a franchise often in the spotlight, has been rocked by an announcement that has sent shockwaves through the entire WNBA. Coach Stephanie White delivered news that many believed was unthinkable, confirming that three pivotal players, Sophie, Kate, the ink had barely dried on Stephanie White's contract with the Indiana Fever before the whispers in the league started turning into shouting matches, signaling a shift that goes far beyond a simple coaching change. On the surface, this looked like a standard feel-good sports story. A franchise legend returning home to lead a young, up-and-coming super team to the promised land. But if you peel back the layers and really look at what is happening in Indiana and across the entire league right now, you will realize that this is the epicenter of a massive labor war that threatens to tear the WNBA apart from the inside out. We all knew Caitlin Clark brought the ratings, and we knew she brought the fans, but nobody was prepared for the financial earthquake she triggered behind the scenes. An earthquake that is cracking the foundation of the league's brotherhood and sisterhood. With a massive Nike deal on the table that dwarfs entire team payrolls, and a looming labor negotiation that has players opting out of their collective bargaining agreement? The tension between the new generation and the old guard has never been this volatile, and Stephanie White has walked right into the line of fire. Stephanie White hasn't just signed up to coach a basketball team. She has walked into a locker room filled with unspoken envy, millions of dollars in wealth disparity, and a roster on the brink of a total emotional overhaul. The veterans are watching their influence fade in real time. The rookies are becoming moguls and household names before they even start their second season. And sitting right in the middle of it is Stephanie White, who recently let slip comments that effectively confirm our worst suspicions. The noise is real. The rage is palpable. And the upcoming season is going to be a battle for the soul of the league. But to understand why this specific coaching hire has triggered such a massive reaction, we have to look deeper than the headlines. We have to look at the leaked details of the new agreement that have everyone terrified for their jobs. And we have to understand the sheer magnitude of the money involved that is making seasoned veterans feel like they are being pushed out of the house they built. To truly understand the pressure Stephanie White is under, you have to realize that this wasn't just a simple job swap or a career upgrade. Leaving the Connecticut Sun was a calculated, risky maneuver that shocked the basketball world. In Connecticut, White had built a fortress of defensive identity. She had a team of veterans who played gritty, physical, mud-fight-style basketball. They were title contenders every single year. A team that nobody wanted to play against because they knew they would wake up bruised the next morning. She had job security. She had respect. She had a system that worked. So, why leave a championship-ready roster to join a team that, despite the hype, is still rebuilding and defensively fragile? The answer lies in the power shift of the league. A shift that is as undeniable as it is controversial. White knows that the center of the basketball universe has moved to Indianapolis, and she knows that is where history will be written. But this homecoming comes with strings attached. Heavy, tangled strings that could choke the chemistry of the team before the season even starts. When White played for the Fever years ago, the league was a different world. It was a grind in the truest sense of the word. Players flew commercial, often squeezed into middle seats, stayed in average hotels, and played for the love of the game because the money simply wasn't there to promise them a secure future. Now, she returns to a franchise that is effectively a traveling rock concert, a spectacle that sells out arenas and demands private security details. Sources close to the league suggest that White's move wasn't just about coaching Caitlin Clark. It was a rescue mission initiated by the front office. The previous leadership was criticized heavily for failing to protect their star player. not just from opponents on the court, but from the relentless media circus off it. White has been brought in as a shield, a veteran presence who can deflect the heat. But here is the problem that no one is saying out loud. By accepting this role, she has put a massive target on her back. The rest of the league, including the players she used to coach in Connecticut, looks at Indiana not with admiration, but with a mix of jealousy, disdain, and professional frustration. White is no longer just a coach. She is the guardian of the league's golden child, and that position isolates her from the fraternity of coaches and players who feel left behind by the Clark phenomenon. She is now the face of the new WNBA, which puts her at odds with the old WNBA that shaped her career. The psychological toll of this cannot be overstated. She has to look her former players in the eye, players she went to war with. And now stand on the sideline of the player those veterans were trying to physically intimidate just a few months ago. You cannot talk about the rage simmering in the WNBA locker rooms without talking about the money. And not just good money. We are talking about generational, paradigm-shifting wealth that has disrupted the hierarchy of professional women's sports in a way we have never seen before. When details of Caitlin Clark's Nike deal surfaced, valued at a staggering $28 million over 8 years, it didn't just break records. It broke the spirit of many veterans who have been carrying this league for over a decade. It fundamentally changed the value proposition of being a WNBA player. Let's put this into perspective to fully grasp the anger. The maximum salary for a WNBA veteran, the absolute most a player can make from the team itself, hovers around $240,000 a year. Most players make significantly less, often under $100,000. Caitlin Clark will earn more from a few photo shoots and a commercial spot with Nike than legends like Aja Wilson or Breanna Stewart will earn from their actual basketball contracts over several seasons combined. This is the Nike bomb. It created an immediate class divide that no amount of PR training can hide. In the locker room, you have rookies flying in private jets for endorsement deals, staying in penthouses, and having brands throw money at them, while 10-year veterans are worrying about their post-career pensions and whether they need to go play in Turkey or China during the off-season just to pay their mortgages. It is not just about jealousy. It is about the feeling of erasure. The veterans feel that the industry is telling them their blood, sweat, and tears for the last 20 years were worth nothing compared to the hype of one rookie class. They feel that the league is saying, "Thanks for keeping the lights on, but we don't need you anymore." Stephanie White has to walk into a locker room where this financial disparity is the elephant in the room. How do you tell a veteran role player to dive on the floor for a loose ball, risking injury that could end her career, just to save a game for a rookie who makes 50 times her salary and has a guaranteed safety net? That is the coaching challenge of the century. The resentment isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a look, a hesitation to pass the ball, a passive-aggressive comment in a press conference about earning it. And now, with the leaks regarding the new signature shoes and merchandise royalties, that resentment is approaching a boiling point. The veterans are seeing Clark get a signature shoe, something only a tiny handful of women have ever received, before she has even won a championship. To the old guard, this feels like a violation of the unwritten rules of sports. You get paid when you win, but in the new economy, you get paid when you trend. The financial resentment we just discussed was the fuel, but the explosion happened recently, when the WNBA Players Association, WNBPA, opted out of the current collective bargaining agreement, CBA. This is the technical side of the drama, but it is the most important part because it dictates the future of every single person in the league. A CBA is the contract between the league and the players that dictates everything, from salaries to travel rules to pregnancy benefits. By opting out, the players are essentially going on strike threat, demanding a bigger piece of the pie. However, leaked details of the negotiations reveal a harsh reality that complicates the narrative. The players are demanding massive salary bumps and revenue sharing, largely basing their arguments on the explosive growth of the league in the last 12 months. But everyone knows, though few will admit it publicly, that this growth is tied almost exclusively to the Clark effect. The viewership numbers, the ticket sales, the merchandise revenue, it all spiked when Clark entered the league. This puts the veteran leadership in a hypocritical bind. They are publicly criticizing the media attention Clark gets, claiming it is unfair and biased, while simultaneously using her popularity as the main leverage to demand millions of dollars in raises. They are eating the food Caitlin Clark cooked while complaining about the chef. It is a paradoxical nightmare that is creating a divide between the players who bring in the views and the players who have paid their dues. The veterans are saying, "We deserve this because we built the league," while the business metrics are saying, "You are getting this because one player changed the math." The leaks suggest the players want a business model that mirrors the NBA, with a 50-50 split of revenue. But league insiders are warning that the math doesn't add up yet. If the league gives in to these demands, the financial structure of the teams will change drastically. This brings us to the most terrifying rumor for the rank-and-file players: the idea that a higher salary cap will actually lead to fewer jobs for the veterans. This is the dark side of the new agreement that nobody wants to discuss openly because it is too scary to contemplate. There is a terrifying theory circulating among agents and mid-level players called the veteran purge. Here is how the purge works and why it is keeping players awake at night. If the new CBA raises the minimum salary to, say, $150,000 and the maximum to $500,000 or more, teams will have to be much more selective about who they keep on the payroll. Currently, a team might keep a beloved veteran on the bench because she is a good locker room presence, she knows the plays, and her salary is manageable. But if that veteran suddenly costs $500,000, she gets cut. It is simple economics. Teams will replace expensive mid-tier veterans with cheap rookies on entry-level contracts to save money for their superstars. The middle class of the WNBA, the solid starters and reliable role players who have been the backbone of the league, are the ones who will suffer. This is why the rage Stephanie White is dealing with is so potent. It's not just anger, it is existential fear. The veterans looking at Caitlin Clark aren't just seeing a star, they are seeing the catalyst for an economic shift that might force them into early retirement. They know that as the Clark economy takes over, the league will become younger, faster, and more marketable, leaving the middle class of the WNBA behind. White has to manage a team where half the roster is wondering if they will even have a job in 2026. This creates a desperate, cutthroat atmosphere during practice that is miles away from the sisterhood the league likes to promote. Every drill, every scrimmage, every preseason game becomes a fight for survival. Players aren't just competing for minutes. They are competing to prove they are worth the new, expensive contracts that are coming down the pipeline. The irony of Stephanie White's hiring is that last year, she was the general on the other side of the war. As the coach of the Connecticut Sun, she managed players like Dejounte Carrington and Alyssa Thomas, players who became the face of the anti-Clark resistance. We all remember the incidents, the hard fouls that sent Clark to the floor, the mocking gestures, the tense post-game interviews where they refused to give the rookie credit. White stood by her players then, defending their physicality and dismissing the idea that they were targeting Clark, calling it just playoff basketball. She was the protector of the old guard's style of play. Now, in a twist fit for a Hollywood movie script, she has crossed enemy lines. She is now responsible for the well-being of the player her former team tried to break physically and mentally. This puts White in a double agent scenario that is ripe for drama. Does she have the trust of the Fever players who watched her defend Carrington last year? Can she really look Caitlin Clark in the eye and say, "I have your back," when 6 months ago she was scheming to shut her down? And how does she handle the inevitable matchups against Connecticut? The first time the Fever plays the Sun this season, it won't just be a game. It will be a psychological thriller played out on live television. White knows exactly how her old team plans to stop Clark because she wrote the playbook. She knows their tendencies, their triggers, and their weaknesses. But she also knows that her old players feel betrayed by her departure. She chose the golden ticket in Indiana over the grit of Connecticut. This adds a layer of personal animosity to the mix. White isn't just fighting the narrative, she is fighting her own past. She has to convince the Fever locker room that she is 100% all in, despite having spent the last year trying to beat them into submission. Stephanie White is smart. She is a media veteran and a basketball lifer. She knows she can't pretend. The toxicity doesn't exist. In her first few press appearances since taking the job, she has used a very specific word over and over again: noise. She talks about blocking out the narratives, ignoring the social media comments, and focusing on basketball. But by constantly bringing it up, she is confirming that the noise is deafening. She admitted that the emotional management of this team is going to be the hardest part of the job. She is dealing with players who check their phones at halftime and see thousands of comments, some worshiping them, some tearing them apart. The racial and cultural tensions that flared up last season haven't gone away. They have just gone dormant for the off-season, waiting for a spark to reignite them. White's strategy seems to be one of insulation. She wants to build a wall around the Fever, creating an us-against-the-world mentality. But that is hard to do when the world includes your fellow WNBA players who are blasting you in podcasts and on Twitter. White has to act as a filter, absorbing the toxicity from the league and ensuring it doesn't touch her star player. It is an exhausting role, and it requires a level of emotional intelligence that goes far beyond drawing up plays on a whiteboard. She has to be a coach, a therapist, a PR manager, and a bodyguard all at once. And she has to do it while knowing that one losing streak will have the media calling for her head. Let's dig deeper into the rage of the veterans, because it is often misunderstood as simple pettiness, but it is actually rooted in a deep sense of injustice. Imagine working at a company for 15 years, building it from the ground up, accepting low pay because you believed in the mission. Then, a new hire comes in